Okay, good morning, Year 5. Just done Joe Wicks with my son. A bit puffed out, but hey, awake and raring to go. So, from last time around, chapters 7 and 8, an inference question. What was Michael thinking when he spoke with Skellig for the first time? You could have said something along the lines of that he was scared, that he was curious, that he was wary, trepidatious, maybe uncertain, maybe feeling excited, definitely curious. Could you think whether Mina and Michael might become friends or not? It's a prediction question. I asked you to explain your answer from the text. I thought when I first read the book that maybe they would become friends. She was a little bit standoffish, a bit distant, a bit aloof, a little bit unfriendly. But then again, it follows the formula, doesn't it, in a lot of books, that two characters become friends in that way, similar ages. Well, we'll see. And as summarising question, can you order these things? And the first that happened in that list was that Skellig ate a spider. Then he asked for an aspirin, which is a type of painkiller, and then he ate a bluebottle fly. Okay, we're on to chapters 9 and 10 this time around. Can you find a word or phrase that David Ellman, the author, uses to describe what Mina looks like? Can you explain how the author engages us with Mina's personality and what makes you think this? And can you find a word or phrase that tells you that Skellig is critical of his own body? Okay. Chapter 9. I saw Mina again later that evening. I was in the little front garden with Dad. We stood there in the thistles and dandelions. He was telling me as usual how wonderful it would be, flowers here and a tree there and a bench under the front window. I saw her further along the street. She was in a tree in another front garden on the same side of the street as us. She was sitting on a fat branch. She had a book and a pencil in her hand. She kept sticking the pencil in her mouth and staring up into the tree. Wonder who that is? She's called Mina. Ah. She must have seen us looking at her, but she didn't move. Dad went in to check the cement in the dining room. I went out the gate and along the street and looked up at Mina in the tree. What are you doing up there? I said. She clicked her tongue. Silly you, she said. You scared it away. Typical. Scared what away? The blackbird. She put the book and the pencil in her mouth. She swung over the branch and dropped into the garden. She stood looking at me. She was little and she had hair as black as coal and the kind of eyes you think you can see right through you. Never mind, she said, it'll come again. She pointed up to the rooftop. The blackbird was up there, tipping its tail backward and forward and squawking. That's its warning call, she said. It's telling its family there's danger near. Danger? That's you. She pointed up into the tree. If you climb up where I was and look along that branch, you'll see its nest. There's 3 tiny ones, but don't you dare go any nearer. She sat on the garden wall and faced me. This is where I live, she said. Number 7. You've got a baby sister. Yes. What's her name? We haven't decided yet. She clicked her tongue and rolled her eyes towards the sky. She opened her book. Look at this, she said. It was full of birds, pencil drawings, lots of them, coloured in blues and greens and reds. This is the blackbird, she said. They're common, but nevertheless very beautiful. The sparrow, these are tits, and lovely chaffinches. And look, this is the goldfinch that visited last Thursday. She showed me the goldfinch, the green and the reds and the bright yellows in it. My favourite, she said. She slapped the book shut. Do you like birds? She said. And she looked at me as if something I'd done had made her cross. I don't know, I said. Typical. Do you like drawing? Sometimes. Drawing makes you look at the world more closely. It helps you to see what you're looking at more clearly. Did you know that? I said nothing. What colour's a blackbird? She said. Black. Typical. She swung round into the garden. I'm going in, she said. I look forward to seeing you again. I'd also like to see your baby sister, if that could be arranged. Chapter 10. I tried to stay awake that night, but it was hopeless. I was dreaming straight away. I dreamed that the baby was in the blackbird's nest in Mina's garden. The blackbird fed her on flies and spiders, and she got stronger and stronger until she flew out of the tree and over the rooftops and onto the garage roof. Mina sat on the back wall drawing her. When I went closer, Mina whispered, "Stay away, you're danger." Then the baby was bawling in the room next door and I woke up. I lay listening to Mum cooing and comforting and the baby squeaking and hissing. The birds were singing outside. When the feed was over and I was sure everyone was asleep, I crept out of bed, got my torch, pulled some clothes on and tiptoed past their room. I took a jar of aspirin from the bathroom. I went downstairs, opened the back door and tiptoed into the wilderness. The takeaway trays were down under newspapers and a heap of weeds. They'd tilted over and lots of the sauce had run out. When I looked inside, the char siu was all gluey and red and cold. I dropped the soggy spring rolls into the same tray and went down towards the garage. "You must be stupid," I told myself. "You must be going round the stupid bend." I looked up at the blackbird on the garage roof and saw how it opened its yellow beak so wide as it sang. I saw the sheens of gold and blue where the early light shone on its black. I switched on the torch, took a deep breath and stepped inside. The scuttling and scratching started. Something skittered across my foot and I nearly dropped the food. I came to the tea chests and shone the torch behind. "You again," he squeaked. "Thought you'd gone away." "I've brought something," I said. He opened his eyes and looked at me. "Aspirin," I said, "and number 27 and 53, spring rolls and pork char siu." He laughed, but he didn't smile. "Not as stupid as you look," he squeaked. I held the takeaway tray across the tea chests towards him. He took it in his hand, but he started to wobble and I had to take it back again. "No strength," he squeaked. I squeezed between the tea chests. I squatted down beside him. I held the tray up and shone the torch onto the food. He dipped his finger in, he licked his finger and groaned. He stuck his finger in again and hooked a long, thin, slimy string of bean sprouts and sauce. He stuck his tongue out and licked. He slurped out pieces of pork and mushrooms. He shoved the spring rolls into his mouth. The red sauce trickled down from his lips, over his chin, onto his black jacket. "Ah," he said, and "ooh." He sounded like he was loving it, or he was in pain, or both those things together. He held the tray closer to his chin. He dipped and licked and groaned. His fingers were twisted and stunted. His knuckles were swollen. "Put the aspirin in," he said. I put 2 aspirin in the sauce, and he picked them out and swallowed them. He belched and belched. His hand slipped to his side again. His head slumped back against the wall. "Food of the gods," he whispered, 27 and 53. I put the tray down on the floor beside him and shone the torch on him. There were hundreds of tiny creases and cracks all over his pale face. A few fine, colourless hairs grew on his chin. The red sauce below his lips was like congealed blood. When he opened his eyes again, I saw the tiny red veins like a dark net across the whites of his eyes. There was a smell of dust and old clothes, dry sweat. "Had a good look?" he whispered. "Where are you from?" "Nowhere." "They'll clear out all this. What will you do?" "Nothing." "What will you—" "Nothing, nothing, and nothing." He closed his eyes again. "Leave the aspirin," he said. I took the top off and put the jar on the floor. I had to push aside a little heap of hard, furry balls. I held one up to the torchlight and saw it was made of tiny bones glued together like with fur and skin. "What are you looking at, eh?" he said. I put it on the floor again. "Nothing." The blackbird on the roof sang louder and louder. "There's a doctor comes to see my sister," I said. "I could bring him here to see you." "No doctors, nobody." "Who are you?" "Nobody." "What can I do?" "Nothing. My baby sister's very ill." "Babies. Is there anything you can do for her?" "Babies. Spittle, muck, spew and tears." I sighed. It was hopeless. "My name's Michael. I'm going now. Is there anything else I can bring you?" "Nothing. 27 and 53. He belched again. His breath stank. Not just the Chinese food, but the stench of the other dead things he ate. The blue bottles, the spiders. He made a gag noise in his throat and he leaned away from the wall like he was going to be sick. I put my teeth beneath his shoulder to steady him. I felt something there, something held in by his jacket. He retched. I tried not to breathe, not to smell him. I reached across his back and felt something beneath his shoulder as well, like thin arms folded up. springy and flexible. He retched, but he wasn't sick. He leaned back against the wall, and I took my hand away. "Who are you?" I said. The blackbird sang and sang. "I wouldn't tell anybody," I said. He lifted his hand and looked at it in the torchlight. "I'm nearly nobody," he said. "Most of me is Arthur." He laughed, but he didn't smile. "Arthritis," he squeaked. He's the one that's ruining me bones, turns you to stone, then crumbles you away." I touched his swollen knuckles. "What's on your back?" I said. "A jacket, then a bit of me, then lots and lots of Arthur." I tried to slip my hand beneath his shoulder again. "No good," he squeaked. "Nothing there's no good no more." "I'm going," he said. I said, sorry. "I'll keep them from clearing the place out. I'll bring you more. I won't bring Dr. Death." He licked the dry sores from below his lips. 27 and 53, he said. 27 and 53. I left him, backed away towards the door, went out into the light. The blackbird flew away over the garden, squawking. I tiptoed into the house. I stood for a minute at the baby's cot. I put my hand beneath the blankets and felt the rattling of her breath, and how soft and warm she was. I felt how tender her bones were. Mum looked up at me, and I could tell she was still asleep. "Hello," she whispered. I tiptoed back to bed. When I slept, I dreamt that my bed was all twigs and leaves and feathers, just like a nest. Okay, next time, chapter 11. So there's those Vipers questions again. Have a little pause before the video finishes. What can you remember?